following is an exclusive Sports Vision presentation. Direct from the Grand Raceway in Broadview, Illinois, Sports Vision presents the 1987 USRA National Championship Slot Car Race. Well, this is slot car racing action at its best. You couldn't ask for anything better than the level of competition that we are going to see here today. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Hazen, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Broadview, Illinois, in a championship setting. Alongside with me is John Myers, the track promoter and the promoter for this event. John, good to be back and working with you again this year.
Yeah, it's been an exciting year for slot car racing, culminating in the Grand Nationals here. We've had an awful lot of racers win and lose so far, and we're ready for the main event.
Well, this is certainly a world-class event, and it's been around. Give us a little bit of the background on where this event has been held before coming here to the Chicago area.
It started 17 years ago, Bill, and it's been around the country, in California, down in Texas several times, in Ohio several times, and we've had an awful lot of different winners. It comes down to Grand Raceway being one of the newest tracks in the country. Promoted heavily for it last year and was awarded it for this year. It'll be in Seattle for next year.
Well, that's great. So it does get around. Everybody around the country gets an opportunity to watch it sooner or later, and I think that's a great aspect of it. We're certainly happy to be hosting it here this year. You talked about the track, and I think that's one of the great things. Not only do we have a totally new race to watch this year, but a totally new setting. We're in a new building in a new town, and with what many are calling the fastest track in the world. It's a beauty. Tell us about it.
Well, that it is. It's designed and built by Jerry Coolidge, the track owner, and Chubba Zika, one of the designers, and a gentleman from Sweden, Hasse Nielsen. It's a full 8-lane track, 155 feet long. It's got 8 turns in it and 7 straightaways. It's one fast track. It was built specifically for this building, and it was also built to make it a little faster than the one we ran on last year. It's got some different angles on the banks and the curves, but it is a standard European King track.
John, one of the things I hear about is the racers themselves talk a lot about the power supply that feeds this track, and apparently it is a really exceptional source of power in comparison to many areas, and that's so vital in terms of what these cars can do.
Well, it's all around 13 volts, but you need a lot of amps to power those heavy-duty motors that the pros are running.
Yes.
And you've got 8 motors up there winding all at once, and they're really drawing the power. Now, this is a full battery-powered track, and the batteries are switched during each event.
You know, a couple of months ago, those who follow the sport remember in Kansas they had a big shootout, and a lot of world records were set. They're talking about the possibility of world records here today, but it's a hard thing to do when you have such a congested track, isn't it? There's so much drain in terms of power.
Well, there will be some records set, especially during qualifying, where they pump up the power a little bit and give everybody a shot at that top qualifier mark. But you'll see some records set, especially in the number of laps per heat and number of laps per race. That's what we really are going to watch for.
How about some of the big guns we can keep an eye on today, John?
Well, I would hate to make any calls in terms
of
a
real murder
who's going to win this race, but needless to say, you've got 8 of the fastest slot car drivers in the world out there. One of them is going to be the new champion.
And all the major teams are here, and this is a team racing event. It's great that the individual can also get into it, but when you get at this high of a competitive level, you're talking about the big guys and some of the great designers and builders of cars.
That's right. You want the support of a manufacturer behind you, Bill, because the cost of racing at this level is very prohibitive for an individual. You want to be able to get your motors directly from a manufacturer and in turn test those motors and chassis and tires, whatever, for that manufacturer. This is essentially like Indianapolis. A lot of the things that have come for the passenger cars, a lot of the safety requirements and new technology come from racing, and the same is here. The things you'll see on the market next year are being developed here today.
Good deal. Well, strap yourselves in, everybody. We'll be coming back and continue our pre-race look at the activities here in Broadview, Illinois in just a moment. Well, the goal of every top slot racer is to get right here, to get to the championships, and there are quite a few that made it, and of course there are many that fell along the way. This is the pinnacle. This is the tops of what it's all about. We're back here in Broadview, Illinois. John, first of all, how in the world do you get to the point where you can compete in the race that we're going to watch today? What's the road to get there?
Well, first of all, Bill, you have to be really into slot car racing. You can't be bothered by a little bit of tension because these things are pretty high-strung events. On the other hand, these racers have been through a series of USRA races throughout the year at different tracks. and they come here already prepared to race in the national championship. The race itself has been what we call the week of speed, and it started Wednesday night with some warm-up races, and on Thursday with all the preliminary or consi races that these guys will go through. It ends up that someone in the pro class will race in 4 or 5 different preliminary races and then in 8 heats in the main event. Each driver has to qualify, just exactly like at Indianapolis, where you've got one shot to get your best time. They pump up the power a little bit, and they've got 3 minutes to get out there and take their best shot. They're obviously all going for the top qualifier spot, which gives them the lane of choice when they start the race.
Yes.
Everybody has their favorite lane to start on, and only the top qualifiers get their choice. Other than that, it's left to the second, third, fourth, etc. So these drivers have really done a lot of racing to get here, and they're going to do an awful lot more before it's over.
You know, I wonder, last year we had a situation where some of the local drivers really had a little bit of an advantage, John, because they knew the track, they knew the surface very well. This is a new track now. It's only been down for a couple of months. They haven't had as much opportunity to run on it. Is some of that local edge neutralized because of that?
It sure is. The racers around here have had this track to run on since October. That does give them a little bit of advantage, but something like this where you've got a pro event and you've got a lot of confusion, you've got racers, a lot of traffic on the track at all times.
Oh, yeah.
It eliminates almost any kind of local advantage. Now, this track is new, like you said, and has been designed specifically to accommodate events like this. Track owner Jerry Coolidge has been very aware that he needed a new location this year, and we've got an awful lot of square footage because most of it's taken up by the pit space and the spectators. We've had an awful lot of those around here, too.
We're going to take a good look at that track in a few moments, but one of the things that impressed me last year was the timing and scoring system that you have here. It's very sophisticated. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's a computer timing system that's accurate down to 1,000ths of a second, and what you really have is a light bar at the start-finish line, and once those cars break through that light, it sets it off. That's the start of the heat, and they come back around in about 2.3 seconds now, and we'll break the light again, and that'll conclude their lap timing. The computer also racks up how many laps per heat each driver does, as well as then the total after 8 heats.
We're not only going to learn a great deal about the cars themselves, but also the devices that control the cars, the controllers, and there's a whole world of manufacturing involved just with those. It's a whole other aspect to us. What about those controllers?
Well, those controllers were really developed in the 1960s as a thumb-type controller. You worked it with your thumb, and as the speeds of the cars grew, Bill, you really needed a way to have a little more finesse, a little more control over the speed of the car. So they went to a finger type. It was originally developed by Jim Russell of the Ruskit Company, one of the manufacturers back then.
Yes.
And the design was sold to Parma International in the early 70s, and virtually every controller on the market now is either a Parma type or a variation of that design. They add variable brakes, they add what's called a choke,
yes,
so that you can lower or increase the power to the car. All kinds of nifty little devices that these manufacturers have worked up to add on to that hand controller.
We are talking about the fact that we believe this track to be the fastest in the world. Let's take a good look at the track, and as we go along, John, point out some of the things that really might be obvious. The unusual banking, you've got a big long straightaway here, some of the aspects that make the track so unusual.
Well, this new track has a lowered bank so we can get more of a angle and less height. We've got about a 60-foot straightaway going into what we call the dead man's turn down there, and then into the finger, underneath the bridge, around the carousel, and then back up over the top. Now, most accidents happen going into that carousel at the 90-degree turn and then coming right around up on top. Some people really do well on this new track because of the design, and it was designed to eliminate some of the problems of the other one. The finger is a little easier to take, and going into the dead man's is actually a little easier on this one too.
Yeah, you do have that problem, though. Kind of a unique problem for the drivers is you do have that little area where the cars are underneath, and you lose visual contact with them. That can be pretty tough when you're talking about cars that travel such a great distance. It's tough to not be
at 100 miles an hour too. Really. It's easy to lose track of the car. So, and by the way, way, when they come down that back straight, they will be hitting a minimum of 75, 80 miles an hour.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic to watch. You know,
And that's real speed, not scale speed.
And it shows the technology that's involved here. And, John, we're going to get into technology with the gentleman who was involved in a 1-2-3 sweep of the 500 that we televised last year, the Chicago 500.
It was a good showing for Cofer.
It was definitely Stu Cofert's day. We guarantee you that. Here he is right here. Let's bring him in. Hi, Stu. Congratulations on last year's event as we talk.
Thank you very much.
You are, of course, very well known in this industry for the unusual motors and the unusual properties that they have. They seem very heat resistant, very effective. What has been the developmental process for you? You've been able to come up with such a solid competitor in that area.
Well, we use a lot of computer-aided design. We design our motors on the computer, and we formulate our own epoxies. We'll take the temperatures up to 700 degrees. These motors see, and the RPMs up to 120,000.
120,000. What type of horsepower will they develop?
About 1/10 of a horsepower maximum.
And of course, when we're talking power to rate, that has to be to a weight ratio. It just has to be outlandish.
Approximately a 14-gram motor putting out about 1/10 of a horsepower.
Oh man, that's unbelievable. I know size is such a crucial thing because you're dealing with such a small object and you're asking it to do something that is not very easy to do. What about the size restrictions and how you go about designing it from a size standpoint?
Well, there's two limitations there. One is torque related. You have to have the motor big enough to get sufficient torque. And one is heat dissipation. So we spend a lot of time with the thermal design to dissipate the maximum amount of heat with an extremely small package. And essentially the entire motor is a heat radiator and a fan built in.
Stu, I remember from last year you had told me, I knew your background in advance a little bit about the fact that you do come out of the R&D end of it and know a great deal about it. How much of an advantage is that in terms of the developmental aspects?
Oh, it's tremendous. These are the highest tech motors that exist. And these are as high tech as anything you see at Indy, maybe more so.
Yeah, I was going to say perhaps even more so because the size restrictions are so great.
Well, that's true, and also because they're not as expensive as Indy engines, you can do much more development, and in an Indy engine, it becomes a matter of economics, whereas these motors are perhaps $120, $130 rather than $10,000.
Yeah. What's the biggest problem that you fight when you sit down and you try to design it on the blackboard, what you're going to do?
Well, the durability of the motor is one of the main factors.
Is it just strictly heat related or?
Heat and centrifugal force. The outside of the motor is rotating about 200 miles an hour, and you're seeing approximately 20,000 Gs on that armature. So it wants to fly apart.
All right, Stu, thanks for the visit. We appreciate it. Continued success to you.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Stu Cofert. Let's go over to John Myers now, who has Joel Montague alongside. John?
I'm here with Joel Montague of Cayman Racing Enterprises from out in Hyattsville, Maryland, and talk a little bit about chassis design for some of these incredibly fast cars. Joel, what is it about the chassis that makes these things go so fast?
The chassis actually is a device that coordinates all the functions of the slot car. It's nothing more than a glorified platform. You have it attached as the motor, to the axle, to the tires, to the front wheels, to the guide flag. It does nothing else.
Well, it certainly looks a little more important than that. However, how have they changed in the last few years?
Well, they have changed. They've changed a lot. One of the ways that they have changed is that the air controls become a major factor with the car now. Years ago, the weight used to be the biggest single thing. You could adjust weight from the front of the car to the back of the car. Weight jacking was a common technique in chassis development, or chassis design. The modern cars, however, use air control, tire widths, and driving skill to get them around the track. It's a different technology entirely.
Now, this chassis that you're holding is made from spring steel?
Yes, it is.
And how is that cut out?
Yeah, a number of ways. Usually for the top pro racers doing their own chassis, it's cut with a little moto tool. It's nothing but a rotary disc that cuts much in the way a grinding wheel would, only in a very thin line.
I see you don't have much for front wheels on there. Do they play an important part?
No, it's not thought so. They're basically there to conform to the rules at this level of racing. In the lower classes of cars, they do actually do some good, and in the older cars, they did some good. You could get some use out of them that way. But today, they comply to the rules.
Well, now, what do you see ahead for chassis development in the next few years, maybe even the next year?
I wish I knew.
How about the Euro sports? You going to get into those? They seem to be pretty popular.
We'd love to get into them. I think it's an idea as time has come, but we really don't have the. It's not a goal of our company.
Well, now let's go back to Bill Hazen with Jan Limpak.
All right, John, we have Jan Limpa alongside with us, and a guy who really is responsible for keeping a lot of these cars on the track, because a lot of them ride with his tires. We haven't talked much about the tires, Jan, but yet they're an absolutely crucial aspect of it. I used to cover the Indianapolis 500, and I think the biggest leap in speed I ever saw was when they made a basic tire change. You go back far enough that you've seen the development of tires here. Talk a little bit about comparing the tires of the 60s that were run on these tracks in comparison to what they're using today.
Well, I'm sure it's like just about every other sport. There's just no comparison to today to 20 years ago. It's just absolutely not. 20 years ago, people would just improvise their own, try and get airplane tires and cut them down on an electric drill or whatever they could. And today we've got high technology machines that cut things within tens of thousands. And it's just the tires are really an integral part of it. When you got a car going 40 or 50 miles an hour, the pressure in the bank has to be enormous. I don't know if anyone's gauged it yet, but it's just a lot of downforce.
How much does it vary from car to car in terms of the type of tire setup that you're going to recommend for someone?
Well, the car has a lot to do with it. You have to mate the tires to the cars, and over a period of time, people will set their cars up to match a certain tire and vice versa. It's just, you need a blend of everything.
Yeah, your tires have been pretty hot. I know you found a pretty good combination. What's been the story on that?
Well, we've been pretty fortunate this weekend. We've got a few top qualifiers, and we're finishing high in all the races. We've come up with a good combination.
From a design standpoint, I think a lot of people might think, hey, a tire is just a tire. But when you go designing them, is your goal to try to get as much of the tire surface onto the embankment as possible, or what?
Well, there again, you have to match the track, depending on the traction of the certain track involved and the conditions, the heat. It has a lot to do with it. The hotter it is, the track conditions change. So you change the tire width as the track conditions change, and it's something you always have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, tire is an absolute key to what happens here and the ability of these racers to perform. Jan, thank you for the visit. Let's go now to John Myers, and he has Chubba Sekihidi alongside, one of the better racers around.
Chubba, describe the kind of body that these professional racers are going to be using on these incredibly high-speed cars.
John, well, essentially what we've got is a variable volume airfoil. At high speeds, the airfoil flattens itself out to increase to an area of 4.5 inches wide by 7.5 inches long, contributing to the effect of the 4.5 by 7.5 is the ground effects that are created by the underside of the body. These shells develop many times the force of a conventional Indy car at scale.
So it's really those big wings that help hold the car on the track at those high speeds, right?
Oh, John, without these airfoil and these wings, this car would fly off the track. The very powerful motor that we place in these devices and the very highly tuned chassis, the only way these things are staying around is by this airfoil. You have to recognize that we've got essentially twice the power of an F-18 in here.
Well, it sounds like the body's what holds it all together, brings all the other components, the chassis, the motor, and the tires all together and makes it work, right?
Unquestionably.
Well, thank you, Chubba. And Bill and I will be back with more from the USRA National Championship Slot Car Race right after this.
We're back here at the Grand Raceway, where the excitement is starting to build for the big race that we're going to be bringing you. Bill Hazen back here with John Myers, and you know, this can really be the pits for somebody who has a bad day, especially in the pits, and that's bringing up the fact that, of course, not only is the racetrack the area which the race is won, but also in the pits. That's an absolute key, John.
Well, that's right. It was a very bad pun, though, Bill. But on the other hand, you're right. The race really can be won and lost in the pits, and not only that, it's the preparation that somebody goes through. These drivers are coming with literally a box full of racing products. They've got 10 or 20 motors. They're worth an awful lot of money, each one. They're coming with several chassis, lots of tires. Plus, once they get in here, they buy an awful lot of things, too. They have to have a steady supply of pickup grades. They've got to have an awful lot of those incidental items. As you remember, in About 1968 in Indianapolis, the famous STP turbine car was put out of the race by a 50-cent washer. And it's like that here. You're going to see some problems based on the products. They're going to try and correct them in the pits.
You bet. Yeah, and solder, definitely one of the items. Yeah, they have plenty of solder, we're sure of that.
Keep the soldering iron on at all times.
The gentleman you're going to talk with knows a lot about him.
That's right.
A lot about that.
Ray Bermley from Phantom Racing over in Hartford, Michigan. Ray, you've been a pro racer for a long time. I wanted to ask you, what's going to go on between the breaks and the heats? What's going to go on in the pits?
Well, you got to remember, we're dealing with some of the most sophisticated electric motors in the world. So the first thing the pit guy does who picks up the car off the track looks at the motor to make sure that no damage has been done to that motor during the preceding heat. Then after that, they would look at the braid on the car. We change the braid, lube the motor if it's necessary. If things are starting to dry up. We change the stickers on the car, of course, because the car has to go to another lane.
That's right.
And that can get you in the end if you're not real careful on that. And then we check all the air control devices on the car and make sure there's no damage to it. Without those, the car just doesn't stay on the track.
Well, now, what kind of preparation does a racer go through coming to a major event like this? How long does it take to get really ready for the Nats?
Well, we have spent about the last 4 months over at this track between 2 and 3 nights a week just preparing for this race. We've developed some new motors that nobody had seen yet. It's just an awful lot of work. As we know, mostly a driver will carry 8 to 12 motors with him when he comes here just to be prepared for any power conditions or anything it might take. It's not an easy struggle.
Well, it doesn't sound like it. And now let's go to Bill Hazen with Paul Pfeiffer.
Let's go ahead and visit with Paul Pfeiffer of Alpha Tires now. And Paul, you certainly know an awful lot about setting up cars, obviously, being involved from the ground up, from the tires up, and about this track, too, which they're billing as the world's fastest, certainly among the fastest anywhere in the country. Anything that hits you as you take a look at this track here? What things stick out about this track that are unusual in your mind?
Well, it's exceptionally fast. I drive up here every week to race on it, and so I'm familiar with it, and I can tell you that it's certainly a standout. It has no major problems, and unless you count the possibility of burning a braid, we sometimes have electrical contacts that won't last for the entire 5 minutes, and then you have to stop and adjust it or change it, and that costs you precious time on the track.
Yeah, when you're traveling at the type of speeds that our viewers are going to see these cars travel at, how much pressure does it put on an ordinary set of tires that would run on these open class cars?
A lot of pressure. We wear out a set of tires in anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes generally.
Yeah, well, that's good for tire sales, huh?
Well, it is, but we wish we could make them last longer, but when you're going at those kind of speeds on tires less than 1 inch in diameter, it just can't happen.
What type of setups are favorable to a track like this in your mind?
What, you mean the motor setups? Or
Yeah, just the overall car in terms of chassis and everything.
Generally, the car should not be set up to get too much traction. Have the back end controllable so that it'll slide a little bit. And if you put too much glue down or run your tires too wide, you end up burning some braid, and you have to stop and change it while the racing is going on.
I think this is a little lower bank track, perhaps just a little bit lower than the track that they used to have at Grand Raceway here. I'm wondering if that means from a driving aspect, is that a little bit less in terms of full punch, a little bit more in terms of control, or how does that change the way these drivers actually go on it?
The bank doesn't have much to do with the driving style because you take it full speed. The other turns on the track are much more important, and because we often have to take them at less than full speed, and they're all set up pretty well.
Have you been running this track long enough? I know it's been in existence for a few months here, but certainly everybody knew the old one very, very well. Have you got a real good handle on this?
Well, I hope so. I've been running on the track since it was built, and so we have some pretty good experience.
Can you tell a Hossy track when you ride on it in terms of, is there a special feel to it? We've heard about how great the tracks are.
Well, sure. They're the only modern slot car tracks and built for these kind of cars. The tracks built years ago had the slots a little bit closer together, and they weren't really quite adequate for the high-speed cars of today. They were built 20 years ago.
Yeah, indeed. Paul, thank you so much for the visit. We appreciate it. Continued success to you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, that's Paul Pfeiffer alongside with us, and now we're going to meet some of the people who cover this sport, and John Myers has them alongside. John?
I'm here with Teresa Anderson of Enthusiast Magazine and John Ford of Scale Auto Racing, two of the publishing giants in this slot racing industry. Teresa, your magazine Enthusiast is relatively new on the market, but has a special focus. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, Enthusiast is the technical journal for the industry. We focus on articles and helping the racers how to work on their cars, how to make them perform better and get more out of their racing.
I also noticed that you focus on how to paint some beautiful bodies because you've got a great article in there. The Yellow Rose of Texas is on the cover, and it is a beautiful body. I see that you have pretty good luck doing those kinds of articles, don't you?
Yes, I do. The racers seem to be real interested in that type of thing.
And you've done something that nobody else has really been able to do, and that's publish a directory of all the slot car tracks around the country, as transient as they may be sometimes. Tell us a little bit about the putting together of this directory.
Oh, the directory was real hard to put together. First of all, I had to find out where the tracks were. And a lot of that came from help from the distributors and the manufacturers and sending me their list and helping me out. And also from all the track owners. They were real cooperative. I'd ask them, is there another track in your area? And this way I feel that we can get people traveling to different tracks and support our tracks more.
I know I've been in the same situation, been on business somewhere and looking for a slot car track. So I'm one of those people that does travel with cars. Thank you so much, Teresa. And John, you are the oldest continuously published slot car magazine in the business. You've seen the Nats and covered them as a publisher since 1979. What do you think of this one?
This is the biggest one so far. We've got more manufacturers and more racers represented than we've ever had.
Well, I tell you, that means an awful lot. And tell us a little bit about Scale Auto Racing News.
From the beginning, Scale Auto Racing News is a publication that has been aimed at the model car racer in general. My roots being in slot car racing, and that's my first love, but I also realized that in order to bring in more slot car racers, we had to reach the HO car racers and the radio control car racers. And so that magazine, or our magazine, goes out now to hobby shops and other areas so that we can educate these people about slot car racing and bring more people into our own ranks.
Well, it sounds good, and I read both of the magazines, and I hope you all do too. And we'll be back after this word and meet the drivers of the 1987 USRA Championship race.
We are back at the Grand Raceway here in Broadview, Illinois, set to watch the 1987 USRA National Championship Slot Car Race. And let's meet the drivers who are going to participate in this event.
Hi, my name is Bob Morton. I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Hi, I'm Dave Gottfried from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
My name's Jim Mayer from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
David McLean, Pasadena, Texas.
My name is Lee Gilbert from Seattle, Washington.
I'm Paul Pfeiffer, and I'm from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. I'm starting on the green lane.
Hi, I'm Rick Dodge. I'm from Eugene, Oregon, and I race for Speed Incorporated. And I'm just real happy to be here and hope I do a good job.
Hi, I'm Dale Yamashita from Long Beach, California.
We're here with the mayor of Broadview, Illinois, Mr. Emil Parks, and Mr. Parks is going to open the ceremonies. Mr. Mayor, will you do the honors for us and cut the checkered flag, please? Thank you very much. And now on to racing action at the 1987 USRA Grand National Slot Car Race.
You hear the applause as we're getting ready to go, and we're going to see champions in action. I guarantee you that. Bill Hazen back with John Myers. We're also joined by outgoing USRA President Bill Pinch, who's going to be with us to help us along with the call and the analysis of today's action. We're getting all set. The marshals are in their positions. Andy Fisher, the race director, who's done a sensational job, is getting everybody in place. And we are set, or very closely set, for the start of the race.
Bill, I'd like to also mention our other race directors, Chubba and Katrine Zika-Haiti, as well as John Ford and his wife, Linda, down from Texas, the publishers of Scale Auto Racing Magazine. They've all come in to help us out in what looks to be a very, very busy race schedule this afternoon.
One of the really nice things about this sport, John, is there's so many nice people associated with it, and that's one thing I've found coming back year in and year out. It's been very enjoyable for me. It's fun to run around and visit with everybody. Everybody has a smile on their face.
And we've got one of those nice people with us here, Bill Pinch from Space Coast Raceway down in Rockledge, Florida, right, Bill?
That's correct.
Well, what do you think? Who's your favorite for today?
Today, I've just got a feeling for Lee Gilbert.
All right, here they go. The race is underway.
Crash.
And we had, indeed, a crash coming into the main straightaway. Several cars got tangled up.
Early leader, Bob Morton. And Lee Gilbert tied on 3. Bob Morton into 4 already.
Yeah, Morton is out in the lead with Gilbert right on his tail. It's very close. And
you know, I said earlier, Bob's on that black lane, and usually you're going to see a lot of laps turned on the black lane. 100 laps or more in a heat's not uncommon. I didn't expect to see it the first heat, because the first heat usually you see a lot of this crashing and bashing.
We're looking at about 20 seconds remaining here in the first heat. And as we mentioned a little earlier, Jim Mayer is doing a great job.
And a great first heat it is, Bill. They're going to hit well over 100 laps with 10 seconds left. Jim Mayer, 97 laps. Let's see if he can break that 100.
Well, you know you're running well if you get 100 laps under your belt.
99 laps
just
for the
missed
leader.
making it. He was breathing down for the 100-lap mark, and he just missed it.
What a fantastic first heat.
Outstanding. Couldn't be better. And so to summarize where we are, Jim Mayer leads it with 99 laps right now. Paul Pfeiffer has moved up into second place with 90 laps accumulated, and then with 88, Lee Gilbert in third. That's where we are through one heat. You know, it's fun watching this competitive level, but the great thing about this sport is that you can get in it on a fun level. You don't have to be the world's best driver to enjoy it. And John, I want to toss it to you to talk a little bit about group racing and perhaps some of the newer products that are on the market.
Well, Bill, when you talk about fun racing in the entry level as well as the competitive products, 2 names really come to mind, that of Mura Motors and Racer Products. Racer Products uses exclusively Mura motors, and Mura was one of the originals from the 60s, and the reason they have lasted so long is that they're fast and reliable. George Mura has done a fantastic job with that company over the years, and we want to say hello to George today. Now, Les Koenig, the president of Racer Products out in California, Les originally started racing as a teenager down in Southern California, and he always used Mura motors. So when he started Racer Products in the mid-'80s, he, of course, used those as an exclusive for all of his products. Les and Racer Products has put together a full line of highly competitive ready-to-runs, which is just what this sport needs. He's pioneered new designs such as this Group 12 with a swing action and a Perimeter 15 and a high-quality 20. Special thanks to Racer Products as one of our fine sponsors.
Jim Mayer has cast down the gauntlet. Boy, what an outstanding first heat he had as he's gone way out in front. Here gets our second heat underway as they have changed lanes for the second heat. Mayer, Bill, just to summarize very quickly, this guy is not a builder, he's a driver, and he is an outstanding driver, and that experience really seemed to show this first.
I think you got to mention Paul Pfeiffer there. Mayer is a tremendous driver, but Paul, being the 3-time world and national champion, has picked up the challenge. On the green lane, he turned 90 laps to finish second. The green lane is not a particularly hot lane on any track. So to run that close, like we said, 9 laps is just a heartbeat in this type of racing. To turn that many laps and be that close after a heat is a credit to Pfeiffer.
So Paul's well set up.
Dave McLean lost a tire just going into the big bank turn. When he did that, the car dropped down to the actual bottom of the car dropped to the racing surface. We've got these little motors turning about 200,000 RPM. They're geared about 5 to 1. So when the gear, a small metal gear, hit the power connector, the gear itself was turning about 40,000 RPM. And of course, you can't survive that.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, Jim Mayer did 100 laps that heat to be our leader with 199. His last time was a 2.778. Really great performance.
Hey, and Paul Pfeiffer has regained second place at 182, a lap ahead of Bob Morton for third. So that's the way we stand after 2 heats. Stay tuned. We'll be back with the third heat right after this. Jim Mayer has made the most of the yellow and orange lanes. Now he moves to the white lane, and it's going to get a little bit tougher from here on out, Bill.
For the average racer, yeah, Jim is running awfully good. The car's really hooked, so.
Taking a look at some of the top laps that are being registered, we've got Rick Dodge in the 2.7s now. Of course, he has a heck of a lot of territory to make up. We have Bob Morton ran a 6-something. He apparently had a very difficult lap there. But Gottfried is running in the 2.9s. Mayer's a little over 3. And so he's slowed down just a shade, but then again, he has a pretty good cushion to work with.
Oh, absolutely. When you got this big a lead, you tend to look a little further ahead of the car and make sure you just don't hit anything.
Remember, too, that we have a power change coming up here before too long. They're going to be changing the batteries. That's going to expect perhaps a little bit more zip.
Put a little fresh juice out there and see how these guys fly into the 4th heat.
The motors will be winding a little higher. You'll see a little better straightaway speed.
Right down to the end of it, 2, 1. That is it. We have come to the end of the heat. And Jim Mayer continues to lead with 294 laps.
And he picked up those 2 laps that Bob Morton had caught him. Bob Morton back to 16 laps down.
Now, Jim Mayer did an incredible 95 laps. Though you were saying 92 would be pretty good on that black lane. So he turned a 95-lap heat.
Oh, he just continues to do a fine job. And then Gottfried right now in 3rd at 274. We're set here for the 4th heat. They have changed power, actually 1 heat early, but the voltage was starting to drop. Bill Hazen back with John Myers and Bill Pinch. Bill, what's the concern now? They did, as I say, that voltage started to drop, and subsequently, you would think that the engines would cool off because they're not running as fast, but actually the motors, it's the other way around, isn't it?
Normally you would think that, exactly, but the variable we have to work with here is resistance. The resistance of the motor is what causes the heat, and when the power starts to drop, the motor creates or has to work against more resistance, therefore it gets hotter.
So it's that fan effect. The fan effect of a motor able to ventilate itself is reduced subsequently when the voltage is not there to get the job done.
Not only that, it can't ventilate itself because it's not turning the RPM that it was, but also the motor has to work harder to get the current that's there.
This particularly fascinates me because it's the only sport where you can be 15 laps down and be right in it. Try that at the Indianapolis 500 sometime.
No, it doesn't quite work that way anywhere but in slot car racing.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what makes it so much fun. Because you're only talking, really what you're looking at is seconds here. How many seconds are you behind? If you're within a minute, that certainly is makeable, especially at this point in the race, early in a race like this.
Oh, again, there's so much that can happen. You come out of the lane at the wrong time, somebody hits you, you got a big lead, it vanishes.
And our leader, after 4 complete heats in the 1987 USRA Grand National Slot Car Races, Jim Mayer, of course, who's led all 4 of the heats.
But Morton and Gottfried have really closed just 3 laps behind, and it is tightening. Well, they're rolling their sleeves up now as most of the faster cars at this point of the race are moving into the tougher lane. So now it's time to grind it out. You saw the heat just getting underway as we've returned to action here in heat number 5, and we had a track call almost immediately, just a few seconds.
What happened to Dave Gottfried? We were a tie going into this 5th heat, and he's down by 30 laps to Bob Morton. What happened?
I can only guess it was an electrical problem, something that they didn't have to go to the pits to fix, but once you pick the car up off the track, that cost you 5 or 10 laps. If you had to do it twice, there you have it.
Well, and indeed, he has fallen back. It's a tough time to have it happen. So now you're looking at Jim Mayer, 463. Mayer's picked up 2 laps on Morton. That is now a 4-lap difference where it was 2 just a few moments ago.
Looks like he's starting to do a little better now.
Mayer
5-lap difference right there.
Yeah, and he's digging in on that lane where he was expected to get a little advantage.
I don't know if there was something hanging up in the motor or not. All of a sudden, Mayer does seem to have plenty of straightaway speed. Whereas a little while ago, he was sitting still coming down the chute.
Lee Gilbert's having some trouble. He picked up his car. He puts it back in. Now he's running again. That car really struggled coming into the main stretch. And that's the end of the heat. So they've gone into the work period here. We have finished the...
Going into heat number 6, and Jim Mayer continues to be our leader, although by not very much.
Yeah, just 4 laps, 472 for Jim Mayer as he leads it. That's the way we stand now, and we'll be coming back for the 6th heat when we return here to the Grand Raceway in a moment. To the 6th heat we go, and right now we are looking at a situation where Jim Mayer, the truck driver from Milwaukee, continues to put the hammer down. Bob Morton, within 4 laps of him, it's tightened up ever so slightly, and it looks like a 2-man race. at this particular point, but don't forget the possibility of the Gottfrieds or the Yamashitas. Well, it looks like Yamashita's really doing a job. He's moved into third place, so we have a pretty good battle going there.
Well, you're going to see some real hot times now. The good runners are on the center lanes, and they're going to be making time. Well, at this point in the race, we have 3 people still in the 400s. Dave Gottfried with 477, Dave McLean with 470, and Rick Dodge with 404, as opposed to our leaders with 562, 554, and 540.
And Dale Yamashita is back into the pits. The car came hopping down the straightaway like it had legs instead of wheels. We don't know what the problem is, whether the car is actually broke, the motor's out, or just the lead wire dragging. But Dale Yamashita looks like he's going to give up that third spot right now.
Bob Morton has now stretched that to a 20-lap lead over Yamashita. And we've got... who else moving up? Oh, look at this. Paul Pfeiffer just took away third place from Dale Yamashita with 547, and that's the end of the heat.
Mayer's lead is now 9 laps over the second place Bob Morton. Mayer did an outstanding job in this particular heat. Boy, he made the most of the lane, the blue lane that he had. He picked up a lot.
Just 2 heats left.
So we'll see what happens. Right now, we are through 6 heats, and Jim Mayer continues to lead. And now we think about the stress of the tires, the arms, the cans.
The car on red in trouble. On the red lane, we have David McLean, Texas racer, was solidly in the middle of the pack. Looks like perhaps this could be Rick Dodge's opportunity to pick up an extra $100.
We had a car go flying in the near side turn, but quickly put back on. Marshals. You know, the marshals here, something I did not mention, the marshaling at this race is outstanding. They, in their own way, are great athletes. Ability to react quickly, find the right lane, and get a car back on the track. That's what you need. Marshals that are certainly the quality of the type of racing that we're seeing out there.
The marshals, as you look around the racetrack, if you're familiar with slot racing at all, you'll note them also as great drivers. And usually the better drivers are your better marshals. These people were handpicked for this event.
Well, you know, the thing about this that hits me, what was great about what Morton has done is that he stayed close enough that he has consistently put pressure on Mayer. You were mentioning that Mayer was trying to conserve his car a little bit, his racer, but when you get into those middle heats, he wasn't able to do it because Morton kept closing and closing and closing on him, so he couldn't run light.
No, the biggest cushion Mayer had, I think, was after heat 1. After that, it just started dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, and now he's running second.
He did get up to 9, but then suddenly here in heat 7, this has turned out to be the key point of the race.
Morton's on blue and Mayer's on purple, and there's part of the story right there, Bill.
Yep, indeed it is. And as
11 seconds left, and he stretched it to a 15-lap lead here. Bob Morton over our previous leader, Jim Mayer.
15 laps, and that is a lot to make up. And so that 7th heat is over. The Texas delegation is cheering, as vociferous as all good Texans are. And so right now, their man, Bob Morton, out of Dallas, Texas, is in the driver's seat. He just ran a 2.78. And as we go into the final lap, in the final heat, we have a real battle going. Bill Hazen and John Myers, we're ready for the finish here, joined by Chubba Sikahidi, 4-time world champion. Chubba, welcome aboard. And boy, you've been telling me all during this race, kind of whispering in my ear, that you like where Bob Morton was, and boy, he's really in the driver's seat now.
Oh, unquestionably. Bob Morton has driven the classic slot car race. He's just sat on the heels of Jim Mayer, and he's just chipped away at him and just nipped at him all the time. Being close enough to make him nervous, being fast enough and consistent enough. He's had a confident look in his face. He knew exactly what was going on the whole time. Jim Mayer has been driving a superb race. Absolutely superb.
Right to his limits.
Absolutely to his limits, though. And so what happened was he made one mistake, and Bob Morton stepped right in and took advantage of it.
As we go into the last minute of the last heat of the race, Bob Morton continues to climb, 753. The next closest is Jim Mayer at 729.
He will probably, Morton, if he continues to run as he is, John, will be near the 765, 770 mark. That's a pretty good day's work, I would say.
It is. He might even go higher than that here, Bill. He's turning some pretty good lap times.
It looks like Lee's picked up the lead over Paul. He's got 7 on Paul. Paul's made mistakes on red. Lee's run like the Dickens down on yellow. Lee's got it.
They were tired.
A real strong move there by Lee Gilbert, as he did close down, just as we said he was closing. You pointed it out first, John, that they had cut that gap down, and he's taken 3rd place.
Boy,
down.
this is amazing, the mix-up that was going on. Going into this heat, we had every position locked, and it's turned out a total rearrangement in the last heat.
And here we go, right down to the finish, the closing seconds, and we have a new champion!
Let's hear it for Texas!
Did somebody just yell hook 'em horns or what?
Hook 'em horns! I must admit, I'm from Austin myself, so.
I knew something would sneak in about that. Well, we have a new champion. Bob Morton finished right where we said he would, 768.
What
right
a
dead center.
fantastic race that was. Boy, I tell you, there was some maneuvering in those last couple heats.
Yeah, and I would imagine that Bob Morton probably was listening to every little bit of his machine as he was coming around, listening for any possible sounds of trouble. He has won the Nationals. We're going to come back, and we'll be visiting Victory Lane, and we have some interesting celebrations ahead, so stick with us. You'll be meeting those drivers and seeing the prizes when we return. Well, they run them quick down in Texas. We found out certainly today we have the champion along with us, Bob Morton. And Robert, I know you've run during the tough times on the North Central Expressway at 5 o'clock. I know it's a lot better running here today than that.
Oh, yeah. If you're from Dallas, you know about Central Expressway.
I sure do. I know all about it. Tell me a little bit about the race you ran. You were looking at a situation. Mayer was there in front of you. I think you did a good job of pushing him and making him perform at the absolute max, and eventually you just ran out and couldn't do it anymore.
Well, I'll tell you, I was just running my own race, and I knew he was a few laps ahead of me, but he had to finish on tough lane black, and I was on purple. Purple's usually pretty good, and you stay out and run your own race and don't worry about everybody else. You usually finish pretty good.
In the 6th heat, you ended 9 laps behind. You were about 3 or 4, and then suddenly you lost a bunch of laps. What happened there, and then what happened that you were able to get back in it and close it so quickly in a little more than a minute?
Oh, we had a little bit wider tire on the car, so it hooked up a little better for the horsepower of the car. I really don't remember why I lost some laps. I think it was probably a case of brain fade or something. But
I doubt that.
Just out trying to have some fun, you know.
All right. Well, I know they're going to be celebrating down there along the LBJ Freeway tonight. Congratulations to you, Bob.
Thank you very much.
All right. We have a little something for you here, too. Jerry Coolidge, who's the owner of this track, has done a great job. I don't know what you're going to like more, whether it's that beautiful trophy. Yeah, whether you're going to like that.
All right, yeah.
Or this just happens there's a little extra cash in there
That's
for you.
nice, yeah. How about that? I'm better with the others.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you very much for coming. Congratulations.
Beautiful new track. Congratulations to you. Bob, all the best to you. Continued success. You're the defending champion. You realize everybody's going to be gunning for you now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll be up in Seattle, so we'll see what happens up there.
All right, Bob. All the best. We want to thank everybody with the Slot Car Racing Group for all their help. We've had an awful lot of fun. Hope you've enjoyed the Nationals. And speaking on behalf of our crew, I'm Bill Hazen. We'll see you real soon. Thank you.